That would be helpful. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Judah.
And welcome to another Shabbat. And Shabbat in Hebrew, I'll tell you, Shabbat means to sit. A lot of people say rest, but Yeshevet, Ani Yoshevet, I sit. And when God completed creating the universe and all there is that's in it, the earth, he rested, he sat on the seventh day. And that means he ceased from creation. And so what I like to commonly say, and I found it helpful to explain to maybe people who haven't heard us before, don't know what our mindset is. Our mindset comes from the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And our mindset is that God meant what he said in Genesis when he said 6 days he created, and he outlined everything he did on 6 days. But on the 7th he hallowed it and set it aside. And therefore, an example closer to us is when Israel left from Egypt, and God gave them commandment when they were in the desert, and when God miraculously provided manna for them to be able to eat and sustain themselves. And he told them, for 5 days you go out and you collect an omer, I think is what it was. But on the 6th day, which is a miraculous day, on the 6th day you collect twice as much, because one caveat is that if they collected more than an omer each day, it would spoil. And so it behooved them, but people didn't listen, and a lot of times they would collect more than the omer and it would spoil. But on the 6th day he said, I want you to go out and collect more than an omer. I want you to collect 2 omers so that you won't have to go out on the 7th day, because that's considered work. And so because the Israelites were so used to working 7 days a week, probably 24 hours a day, that they had forgotten about the 7th day, that God rested and expected for them to rest. And how can we feel joyful about resting? How can we feel ecstatic? Because if God hadn't said the 7th day the 6th day you collect enough for the 7th, we would probably be worried. But John, as you usually say,
the 7th day is on God.
God provides for the 7th day. He does not expect for us to go out and work. Matter of fact, it's forbidden. And he says, if you would just obey me, God says throughout all of the Torah and the prophets, he admonishes Israel, if you will just obey me, if you will just obey my commands, I will provide for you. I will give you what you need. It's as simple as that. And by believing what God said, when he says, don't go out on the 7th, collect what you need to on the 6th day. Collect twice as much. God has made provision. So the 7th day is on God. So we are having 2 Parashah this week. And the Parashah are Israel divides up the 5 books of the Torah into sections for a year. And each section is called a Parashah. And this Parashah this week, the 2 of them, the first, Mattot, which means tribes, is taken from Numbers 32, verse 2, through 32:42, and it begins. Okay, and it begins. V'yedaber Moshe el Roshi ha-Mattot livnei Yisrael lamor ze hadaver asher tzava Adonai. Moses spoke to the heads of the Israelite tribes, saying, this is what the Lord has commanded. And in my Torah, this Parashah is divided into, I can't tell you right off, but I'll read them all. The first section is offerings, festivals, and vows of women. The second section is war and first settlement, and that concludes it. So there are 2 sections, and that's from Numbers 31 1 through 32:42. So it's just two sections, but it's a little bit of reading. And the second Parashah is called Masei, which is journeys of, and it's Numbers 33 1 through 36:13, and it begins Ele Masai Bnei Yisrael asher ya'u me'eretz Mitzrayim letzvotam beyad Moshe ve'Aharon. These were the marches of the Israelites who started out from the land of Egypt, troop by troop in charge of Moses and Aaron. And this part, let's see if this is divided into sections. The first section is review of the wanderings, boundaries of Canaan, and the second section is, let me make sure, yes, Levitical towns, cities of refuge. And what it also is, it ends the book of Numbers. So we'll do something after we get to the end that we do at the end of every Parshah, the end of every book. So we have quite a bit of reading, and I dare say that probably John will do the expounding, and I will do most of the reading. So let's move forward, John.
Psalm 119 to Zedai.
Wait. I know it is, but I just want to make sure before I say it. Sabi. You were close.
Righteous art thou, O Lord, and upright are thy judgments. Thy testimonies that thou hast commanded are righteous and very faithful. My zeal has consumed me, because my enemies have forgotten thy word. Thy word is very pure. Therefore thy servant loveth. I am small and desperate, yet I do not forget thy precepts. The righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Trouble and anguish have taken hold on me, yet thy commandments are my delight. The righteousness of thy testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live. This is the word of the Lord. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. May your kingdom come, and may your will be done. We give thanks to you, Lord God, for you have brought us to your Shabbat, this day that you created at the beginning, created and rested in it, and blessed all the other days in the week through it, that they may be refreshed and renewed, that they may give thanks and acknowledge God who has created them and has blessed them. And in this day that you have blessed, Lord, we rest and seek to draw near you, to draw near to you to give you thanks, to draw near to worship and sing praises to you. For Lord God, you have created us, and you have provided everything for us. And in this day we celebrate, but we do not celebrate alone, Lord. We celebrate with our brethren the Jews, who you brought out of the house of bondage, out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And at Mount Sinai I gave them this command also, to rest on this day, to acknowledge that they are free men, and that they are in charge of their own time, and at this time of day and year. They call upon you, Lord, and they rest and worship and sing and pray and study to draw closer to you. And we celebrate with them, Lord. And and we seek to draw close as they draw close as well. For you have drawn us close, and seek to draw us even closer to you. And we welcome you into this house, and seek closeness. For you have promised a better house, and in that house we will draw even closer and closer to you. And we thank you, Lord, for having such kindness and grace and mercy towards us, that we may draw closer to you even more so. So with our brethren the Jews who celebrate this day, we give thanks to you, Lord God, for the Son who died to draw us close to you, our Savior, Messiah Christ. And his death has made it possible for us to be so joyful. And we give thanks to him and to the Spirit that remains. And in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min sawat. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us bread from the earth. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Berei pri hagafen. Blessed art you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who gives us the fruit of the vine. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom, Judith.
We look forward to this discussion, to summing up Numbers. Numbers, Bamidbar. To sum up that. And we start out with the first Parashah, which is Mattot, and that's Numbers 30, verse 2. And I think I'm going to ask you to read this portion, to read the first part. And it goes from 30, verse 2 through 2 through 17. So that'll get you off the hook. That'll let you read and get you off the hook. So Numbers 30, verse 2 through 17.
All right. I'm sorry.
Numbers 30,
Yeah.
verse 2 through 17.
Okay. Well, mine stops at 16. But
Okay, wherever it stops.
so, if a man vows a vow unto the Lord, or swears an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. If a woman also vows a vow unto the Lord, and binds herself by a bond, being in her father's house in her youth, and her fathers hear her vow, and her bond wherewith she has bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace at her, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she has bonded her soul shall stand. But if her father disallows her in the day that he heareth, not any of her vows or of her bonds wherewith she hath bound her soul shall stand. And the Lord shall forgive her, because her father disallowed her. And if she has at all an husband, when she vows, or uttereth aught out of her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband hears it, and held his peace at her in the day that he heard it, then her vow shall stand, and her bonds wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband disallows her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and that which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, of none effect, and the Lord shall forgive her. But every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their souls, shall stand before her. And if she vows in her husband's house, or bounds her soul by a bond with an oath, and the husband hears it, and held his peace at her, and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. But if her husband hath utterly made them void on the day he heard them, then whatsoever proceedeth out of her lips concerning her vows, or concerning the bond of her soul, shall not stand. Her husband has made them void, and the Lord shall forgive her every vow and every bond oath to afflict the souls. Her husband may establish it, or her husband may have it voided. But if her husband altogether holds his peace at her from day to day, then the establishment of all her vows and all her bonds which are upon her, he confirms them, because he held his peace at her in the day that he heard them. But he shall anyway make them void after that he has heard them. Then he shall bear her iniquities. These are the statutes which the Lord commanded Moses, between a man and his wife, between the father and his daughter, being yet in her youth, in her house, in her father's house. It stops
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
The next says, and the Lord spoke unto Moses. This one is, I guess I don't want to say straightforward, but it deals with making vows. And I guess the big point here is vows are made by words.
Mm-hmm.
everything is created by words, and these words are everything is done by the creation of words, and we create vows through words, and they express our action or our desire. A man can make a vow, and there is no second guessing. There's no way he can get out of it. There isn't someone that needs to approve the vow he makes. If he makes it, he has to live with it. With a woman, however, and a daughter, there's kind of a caveat that if the father hears it or the husband hears it, then they can void the vow or they can affirm it. So either the wife or the daughter will have to make the vow later on. At least the daughter, when she's out of her father's house, she can make it, assuming she's not married and her husband can void it. But those are the two caveats. Now, there is one other thing that I'm not sure I get the distinction, because a widowed lady can make a vow and it stands. A divorced lady can make a vow and it stands. But if she's a man living with a husband, then she can have kind of a waiver. It can be voided. So I'm not sure I understand the difference. If a lady is living as a widow, she can make the same vow that she made if she was married to the guy, and it stands. So I'm not sure I understand that.
I guess what it's saying legally then is that if she's married, she doesn't have the right to make a contract unless her husband approves it.
Okay, but
it's all about because she's married. If she's a widow, she doesn't have a husband,
I understand.
so she can make vows herself. That's
so. Okay, but I guess I just don't understand.
It's a legal issue.
I understand, but she makes a vow. But even she makes a vow, whether she's married or widowed.
No. Let's stick with each category because each category is separate.
Well, but we're talking about a woman.
Yes, but they have separate categories.
Right. Okay. There's a married woman.
Yes.
And there is a widow woman.
And a woman who's not married, who lives in a father's house.
But let's just do the two.
Let's do one each, though.
No, I'd like to compare the two.
Okay.
Because you have a woman, she's either single or married, and she makes a vow. In a case where if she makes it as a single lady, living on her own.
No, living in her father's house.
No, well, okay, there's a lot of complexities there. I'm just taking a scenario where, I said a widow lady.
No, you said a single.
Oh, okay. At first I said, there's a widow lady, and there's a married lady.
Yeah.
Two different ladies.
Okay.
Two ladies, they both make the same vow.
Yeah.
They're neighbors, they make the same vow. Why would it be so significant that one lady vow stands and another vow can be voided by her husband? I guess that's the part I don't get. Because they're equally capable women.
Like what you're leaving out is the husband.
Okay, so
Evidently God, I'm just going by what God, it appears, and this is evidently if the husband is living, and the wife, again, if the husband is living, evidently he can annul the vow.
Right, I understand that.
If he's not living, he's dead, and the woman, when she makes a vow, that's it.
Okay.
It stands.
But why wouldn't it stand if he was even living?
You have to take that up with God.
Okay, now, there's one person that's excluded from this. A son.
Why do you think that is?
I'm saying he's excluded.
Man. Now what I find
interesting. No, he's not I said a son. A son who is
male.
A teenager.
Male.
A teenage son living in the house.
Male.
Oh, so a teenage son.
Male. The one who's...
but a teenage son is a male. a teenager son living in the house. He and his sister are sitting together. She makes a vow. He makes a vow. The father hears both. Can he void his son's vow? Or is,
You tell me.
well, I don't know. I'm sorry, it doesn't mention the son. So I'm sure a widowed man or a divorced man can make a vow because he can make a vow whether he's married or not married. But I don't know. I wonder, can a teenage son make a vow and it stand? I don't know. I haven't in
Well,
the readings.
Get back with me tomorrow afternoon.
Well, even Masei, no one touched that one yet. But the idea is we create things through words. And sometimes the words stand, and sometimes the words can be disavowed.
Well, I want to bring something up and see if this came up in your lesson. Very interesting. And you don't have to answer it now. But when we were talking about all of this, when the couple gets married in Israel,
Okay.
the husband signs a ketubah, a get.
Okay.
God throughout the Bible says to Israel, you're my wife, and their ketubah is the Torah. God says, I'm going to do all of this for you if you will obey my rule or my laws. I will do all of this for you. What I find interesting in all of this is, again, it is the husband in a broader sense, when we look at the whole thing, where God promises. God said, marry me, Israel, and I promise to take care of you. It is not the wife's responsibility to take care of both of them. It is the husband who's proclaiming that I will be faithful to you, and the husband said, you're faithful to me, I will take care of you. So I just found this very interesting when they were outlining all of this about basically contracts. Can the wife, and we're dealing in law, can a wife execute a contract? Can she execute a contract? That's what I think. That's what I look at this as.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway.
Well, that is, in a sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And have it
You can
stand.
Yes, you can.
If but
Husband, hold it. Husband keeps his mouth shut, it stands.
okay, all right. There is the caveat.
You're
There
right.
is the caveat.
Mm-hmm.
If he opens his mouth, then it won't stand.
Well, it goes to a certain point, too. If there's no husband to open the mouth, it stands. Even with the widow, there's no husband to open his mouth, so it stands.
So her contract is valid.
Yeah.
So we're talking about contract here. Contracts. Anyway,
Okay.
let's go on because we've got a lot to go over. And okay, let's go on to the next part. And it's quite a bit of reading. And you relax. And I will read war and first settlement. And this is taken from Numbers 1 through 32:42. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, avenge the Israelite people on the Midianites, then you shall be gathered to your kin. Moses spoke to the people, saying, let men be picked out from among you for a campaign, and let them fall upon Midian, to wreak the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall dispatch on the campaign 1,000 from every one of the tribes of Israel. See, 1,000 from each tribe. So 1,000 from each tribe were furnished from the divisions of Israel. 12,000 picked for the campaign. Moses dispatched them on the campaign, 1,000 from each tribe, with Pinchas, son of Eleazar, serving as priest of the campaign, equipped with the sacred utensils and the trumpets for sounding the blast. They took the field against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and slew every male. Along with the other victims, they slew the kings of Midian, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. They also put Balaam, son of Peor, to the sword. Balaam. The Israelites took the women and children of the Midianites captive, and seized as booty all their beasts, all their herds, and all their wealth, and to destroy by fire all the towns in which they were settled, and their encampments. They gathered all the spoil and all the booty, man and beast, and they brought the captives, the booty, and the spoils to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the whole Israelite community at the camp in the steppes of Moab, at the Jordan near Jericho. Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the chieftains of the community came out to meet them outside the camp. Moses became angry with the commanders of the army, the officers of the thousands, and the officers of hundreds, who had come back from the military campaign. Moses said to them, "You have spared every female, yet they are the very ones who, at the bidding of Balaam, induced the Israelites to trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor, so that the Lord's community was struck by the plague. Now, therefore, slay every male among the children, and slay also every woman who has known a man carnally, but spare every young woman who has not had carnal relations with a man. You shall then stay outside the camp 7 days, every one among you, or among your captives, who has slain a person or touched a corpse, shall cleanse himself. On the 3rd day and 7th days, you shall also cleanse every cloth, every article of skin, everything made of goat's hair, and every object of wood." Eleazar the priest said to the troops who had taken part in the fighting, "This is the ritual law that the Lord has enjoined upon Moses. Gold and silver, copper, iron, tin, and lead, any article that can withstand fire, these you shall pass through fire, and they shall be clean, except that they must be cleansed with water of lustration. And anything that cannot stand fire, you must pass through water. On the 7th day you shall wash your clothes and be clean, and after that you may enter the camp." The Lord said to Moses, "You and Eleazar the priest, and the family heads of the community, take an inventory of the booty that was captured, man and beast, and divide the booty equally between the combatants who engaged in the campaign and the rest of the community. You shall exact a levy for the Lord. In the case of the warriors who engaged in the campaign, 1 item in 500 of persons, oxen, asses, and sheep, shall be taken from their half share and given to Eleazar the priest as a contribution to the Lord. And from the half share of the other Israelites, you shall withhold 1 in every 50 human beings, as well as cattle, asses, and sheep, all the animals, and give them to the Levites, who attend to the duties of the Lord's tabernacle." Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord commanded Moses. The amount of booty other than the spoil that the troops had plundered came to 675,000 sheep, 72,000 head of cattle, 61,000 asses, and a total of 32,000 human beings, namely the women who had not had carnal relations. Thus the half share of those who had engaged in the campaign was as follows. The number of sheep was 337,500. The Lord's levy from the sheep was 675. The cattle came to 36,000, from which the Lord's levy was 72. The asses came to 30,500, from which the Lord's levy was 61. And the number of human beings was 16,000, from which the Lord's levy was 32. Moses gave the contributions levied for the Lord to Eleazar the priest, as the Lord had commanded Moses. As for the half share of the other Israelites, which Moses withdrew from the men who had taken the field, that half share of the community consisted of 337,500 sheep, 36,000 head of cattle, 30,500 asses, 16,000 human beings. From this half share of the Israelites, Moses withheld 1 in every 5 humans and animals, and he gave them to the Levites, who attended to the duties of the Lord's tabernacle, as the Lord had commanded Moses. The commanders of the troop divisions, the officers of thousands and the officers of hundreds, approached Moses. They said to Moses, "Your servants have made a check of the warriors in our charge, and not one of us is missing. So we have brought as an offering to the Lord such articles of gold as each of us came upon, armlets, bracelets, signet rings, earrings, and pendants, that expiation may be made for our persons before the Lord." Moses and Eleazar the priest accepted the gold from them, all kinds of wrought articles. All the gold that was offered by the officers of thousands and the officers of hundreds as a contribution to the Lord came to 16,750 shekels. But in the ranks everyone kept his booty for himself. So Eleazar the priest accepted the gold from the officers of thousands and the officers of hundreds, and brought it to the tent of the meeting as a reminder in behalf of the Israelites before the Lord. The Reubenites and the Gadites owned cattle in very great numbers, noting that the lands of Yazer and Gilead were a region suitable for cattle. The Gadites and the Reubenites came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the chieftains of the community, and said, "Ataroth, Dibon, Yazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliale, Sebam, Nebo, and Beon. The land that the Lord has conquered for the community of Israel is cattle country, and your servants have cattle. It would be a favor to us," they continued, "if this land were given to your servants as a holding. Do not move us across the Jordan." Moses replied to the Gadites and the Reubenites, "Are your brothers to go to war while you stay here? Why will you turn the minds of the Israelites from crossing into the land which the Lord has given them? That is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to survey the land. After going up to the Wadi Eshcol and surveying the land, they turned the minds of the Israelites from invading the land that the Lord had given them. Thereupon the Lord was incensed, and he swore, 'None of the men from 20 years up who came out of Egypt shall see the land that I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, for they did not remain loyal to me. None except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizites, and Joshua, son of Nun, for they remained loyal to the Lord. The Lord was incensed at Israel, and for 40 years he made them wander in the wilderness until the whole generation had provoked the Lord's displeasure and was gone. And now you, a breed of sinful men, have replaced your fathers to add still further to the Lord's wrath against Israel. If you turn away from him, and he abandons them once more in the wilderness, you will bring calamity upon all the people." Then they stepped up to him and said, "We will build here sheepfolds for our flocks and towns for our children, and we will hasten as shock troops in the van of the Israelites until we have established them in their homes, while our children stay in the fortified towns because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until every one of the Israelites is in possession of his portion. But we will not have a share with them in the territory beyond the Jordan, for we have received our share on the east side of the Jordan." Moses said to them, "If you do this, if you go to battle as shock troops at the instance of the Lord, and every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan at the instance of the Lord, until he has dispossessed his enemies before him, and the land has been subdued at the instance of the Lord, then you return, you shall be clear before the Lord and before Israel, and this land shall be your holding under the Lord. But if you do not do so, you will have sinned against the Lord, and know that your sin will overtake you. Build towns for your children and sheepfolds for your flocks, but do what you have promised." The Gadites and the Reubenites answered Moses, "Your servants will do as my Lord commands. Our children, our wives, our flocks, and all our other livestock will stay behind in the towns of Gilead. while your servants, all those recruited for war, cross over at the instance of the Lord to engage in battle, as the Lord orders. Then Moses gave instructions concerning them to Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the family heads of the Israelite tribes. And Moses said to them, if every shock fighter among the Gadites and the Reubenites crosses the Jordan with you to do battle, at the instance of the Lord, the land is subdued before you. You shall give them the land of Gilead as a holding. But if they do not cross over with you as shock troops, they shall receive holdings among you in the land of Canaan. They shall, yes. The Gadites and the Reubenites said in reply, whatever the Lord has spoken concerning your servants, that we will do. We ourselves will cross over as shock troops at the instance of the Lord into the land of Canaan, and we shall keep our hereditary holding across the Jordan. So Moses assigned to them, to the Gadites, the Reubenites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, the land with its various cities and the territories of their surrounding towns. The Gadites rebuilt Dibon, Atoroth, Aror, Atroth Shofan, Yazer, Yogbeha, Beit Nimrah, Beit Haran, as fortified towns, or as enclosures for flocks. The Reubenites rebuilt Heshbon, Eleale, Kiriathaim, Nebo, Baal-Meon, some of the names being changed, and Semah. They gave their own names to towns that they rebuilt. The descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and captured it, dispossessing Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to Machir, son of Manasseh, and he settled there. Yair, son of Manasseh, went and captured their villages, which he renamed Havoth Yair. And Nobah went and captured Kenath and its dependencies, renaming it Nabo after himself.
Okay.
They're jumping bad.
No, true. Now, it starts off very interesting. Let me start in verse 30. No, verse 31.
It starts in 32.
Yeah,
30.
31.
30.
Oh, where God orders Moses. It's interesting, and God spoke to Moses, avenge the children of Israel of the Midianites. Afterwards shall thou be gathered unto your people. So Moses is going to die. He says, you're going to have to avenge the Midianites. This is for what they had done with the idol worship, bringing Israel into idol worship. But he is to avenge them. But the key point is, and he says, after that you will die. And what does Moses do next? And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, arm some of yourselves for war. Almost immediately. You know, if you knew you were going to die, well, why not just put it off for a month or two, a year or two? Not Moses. Went straight to God's word to avenge them.
Arm yourselves.
Arm yourself. And gave out, 1,000 per tribe. But it was immediate. Moses knew at that point he knew he wasn't going into the land. God didn't say why at this point, at least not in this verse. He wasn't going in. And what does he do? Starts war. The sooner they get in the land, the better. Must be his attitude. So they create war on the Midianites, and pretty much devastates all of them. And the guy who wanted to curse them, he got whacked.
Well, he's going to. He went.
He went to. And the guy, Balak, I guess, kind of got off unscathed, so somewhat. But the men guess, had pity on the women and brought some of them back. And Moses says, no, they caused you to sin. And anyone that's been with a man, nope, they can't live. And so they had to kill them. Now, one person's name came up again. We talked about him a few times.
Pinchas.
He's a priest now. He went to war with them with the holy instruments.
Yes.
With the holy,
I'm glad you noticed that.
And the trumpet.
And the holy instrument out front.
To blow in his hand.
In Chronicles, they that's what they did. That's one book I remember where who was the first to go out before Israel in war? The Levites.
The priests. Yeah. Okay. Levites.
The Levites went out first.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most armed, but the Levites.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Singing praises to the Lord.
Right.
To let them know this is the God of Israel. This is not just men going out. The God of Israel leads this army.
Right. And also, I kind of skipped over a part here where they had to kill all the women. They had to be purified. And I'm tempted to say they had to use the water of the red heifer. Although it doesn't mention that, but it does mention
water's a lustration.
Yeah, water's lustration. Yeah, and I'm thinking that it's the red heifer.
That's the heifer.
That's from the red heifer. So I guess they must have had some at that time. And also, what other interesting parts here? This will be long. The part where, in this battle, nope, they didn't lose a single soldier. In verse 32, Reuben and Gad and Manasseh came to Moses. Some describe this as a negotiation. There was land, and it was good for cattle, and they wanted to take that land's possession, take that land as a possession, as opposed to the land that God had promised. So I guess God can promise some good land, promised land, but you might see something that, ooh man, this suits me better. Couldn't they have land of equal value inside the promised land? I don't know. They didn't think so, but I may be getting off track. But they go to Moses, and they present to Moses saying, Moses, we want to stay here. Because the land is good. And Moses did not just say flat out no. He went into detail as to what was going on. And the point was that Moses saw it as an act of rebellion. Because he saw it as the same thing that their forefathers did, a rebellion, and they were stuck in the desert for another 40 years.
Right.
He called them sinful men. So they saw it as just land. How Moses saw it as rebellion. And he goes into details why he thinks it's rebellion. So they come to Moses, they came near unto him, Moses. You would think since they were talking to him, they would have been near to him anyway. I have one version that says they approached him, and at first, and this time they said they came even closer to him, because they want, it's body language there. They want to become a little bit more personal. So they explain why they wanted that land. Even more so, and also they said something else. I'm sorry, they mentioned the land at the beginning, but then they said, no, Moses, you got the wrong idea. They approached me and says, no, Moses, you got the wrong idea. We will be the first in battle. Well, we want to build our house and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We want to be the first in battle, and we will not settle in our place if we don't help every other tribe get their share of the land. So we are going to go in first So Moses looked at that, he listened to him, and he says, okay, so what has developed here is an idea of trust. Now, Moses did say one other thing that was pretty unique, and we use it nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
We call these people influencers.
Mm-hmm.
What Moses is saying also, not only were sinful, they were doing the same thing their fathers did, but if you don't go in, the other tribes, they're going to have the same attitude. You're going to be a bad example for the other tribes. And that's what's going to cause God's wrath to flare up again. You're rebelling like your father. What you do will influence the other people. And they said, no, Moses, that's not true. We will go in first. And we're not going to rest until all the other tribes have their land. So, what happened? Then Moses goes to this agreement that Moses had with the tribe of Reuben and the other tribes was based on love and trust.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Moses goes to the priest to explain this arrangement, he doesn't use, I trust these guys. It's okay for these guys to take this thing. He uses a completely different language, as one teacher says. He used the language of consequences and condition.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the condition. You don't come into the land. If you don't do what you said,
right,
you're going to get land here, inside Israel. If you do what you said, then you get the land that you want. But here the language changed. Because Moses couldn't say, this is what they want to do, I believe them, trust me. He's not asking them, all the other tribes of Israel, to trust Reuben. Because they may say, why should we trust them?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we believe him? Okay, Moses is good for you to trust him, and you believe we don't. They may be nice guys, but we don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
So Moses could not use that language of trust,
right,
of love and trust. He had to use a different language.
Conditions. You do this, you get this.
And the consequences if you don't.
Yeah.
And life is full of that. Consequences and conditions. And that was the very interesting thing I thought about that. Moses could not ask them to trust him, because why should they? They had nothing to offer. Reuben had nothing to offer to them. What are we going to say? Trust us? No. Consequences and conditions.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go in the land, you don't keep your word.
Right.
You get the land inside of Israel. If you keep your word, you're going to have the land you want. Now, it's fortunate. This was still a bad mistake by Reuben, because the first tribe to go into exile, the first two tribes to go into exile, was those two tribes.
Mm.
So it didn't serve them well. There were probably other things that caused that. They probably fell away from Torah, maybe.
Yeah.
That may have been the case.
Falling away from God's instructions. That's always the case.
Yeah.
And they fall away, and it's a lesson for everyone.
Right.
You fall away from God's instructions, and there are the consequences for not following God's instructions.
Right.
And that's pure and simple.
Yes.
The whole world would be in perfect order if they had not gone away from God's instruction from the Garden of Eden.
Mm-hmm.
When God said, don't eat that.
Right.
It was like, I guess nowadays when you tell a child, don't do that, it's almost like a command to do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We have it's something about us after we sin, well, before we sin, that we are drawn to do things that God says not to do.
Mm-hmm.
We don't trust, since He's God and He knows everything. Just like observing the Sabbath, 7th day Sabbath. He's God. He knows everything. He would not tell you something that's going to harm you. He commands you to do something that's going to help you. But yet and still we just push back on it. When God said, this is what I want you to do. And we don't have to know why. But know that God loves us and he wouldn't do anything to our hurt. And what we have done is circumvented God's rules and regulations. And the things that God, and consequences like that, like Moses outlined, if you don't do what you said, this other consequences. And right now, this whole world is suffering the consequences of disobedience to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Pure and simple. Anything?
No, that's all I have.
You can just take a small break here and drink some water since I have to read some more. I like the word, and just to give a Hebrew lesson, when it talks about the sharp troops, chaluts, they call the first people who returned to Israel, I don't know if before, but during before Israel was a state, and I think maybe after, and now they're called chalutzim, which means, it says sharp troops here, but it also, in my little explanation, it said they were armed. They are pioneers, chalutzim. So this is, even to the day, Israel uses this for their returning people, chalutzim. First shock troops, the first to go in. So I thought that was very good. I love that that word, little Hebrew lesson there, little side note. That's for free. I'm not going to charge you. Okay, let's go to the second Torah portion. Masei, journeys of, and that's Numbers 33:1 through 36:13. And let's see, it's two sections. The first is a review of the wanderings, boundaries of Canaan, and the second one is Levitical towns, cities of refuge. And we'll read this together, but I'll have you read chapter 36. I'll let you in since you began. Okay? So I'll start off, and you will do the very end, which is chapter 36, 1 through 13, and get your, we'll get it, make sure you get your, I'm sure they have it here in our handout, make sure you have that ready to say. Okay. These were the marches of the Israelites who started out from the land of Egypt, troop by troop, in the charge of Moses and Aaron. Moses recorded the starting points of their various marches as directed by the Lord. Their marches by starting points were as follows. They set out from Ramses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. It was on the morrow of the Passover offering that the Israelites started out boldly in plain view of the Egyptians. The Egyptians, meanwhile, were burying those among them whom the Lord had struck down, every firstborn, whereby the Lord executed judgment on their gods. The Israelites set out from Ramses and encamped at Sukkoth. They set out from Sukkoth and encamped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They set out from Etham and turned about toward Pihath-Hiroth, which faces Baal-Zephon, and they encamped before Migdal. They set out from Pinei-Hahiroth and passed through the sea into the wilderness. And they made a 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and encamped at Marah. They set out from Marah and came to Elim. There were 12 springs in Elim and 70 palm trees, so they encamped there. They set out from Elim and encamped by the Sea of Reeds. They set out from the Sea of Reeds and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. They set out from the wilderness of Sin and encamped at Dophkah. They set out from Dophkah and encamped at Alush. They set out from Alush and encamped at Rephidim. It was there that the people had no water to drink. They set out from Rephidim and encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from the wilderness of Sinai and encamped at Kibroth Hatava. They set out from Kibroth Hatava and encamped at Hazaroth. They set out from Hazaroth and encamped at Rithmah. They set out from Rithmah and encamped at Rimmon Perez. They set out from Rimmon Perez and encamped at Libnah. They set out from Libnah and encamped at Rissa. They set out from Rissa and encamped at Kehilath. They set out from Kehilath and encamped at Mount Shepher. They set out from Mount Shepher and encamped at Haradah. They set out from Haradah and encamped at Machaloth. They set out from Machaloth and encamped at Tahath. They set out from Tahath and encamped at Terach. They set out from Terach and encamped at Mithkah. They set out from Mithkah and encamped at Hashmonah. They set out from Hashmonah and encamped at Moseroth. They set out from Moseroth and encamped at Bnei Yakan. They set out from Bnei Yakan and encamped at Har Hagidgad. They set out from Hor Hagidgad and encamped at Yothbath. They set out from Yothbath and encamped at Abonah. They set out from Abonah and encamped at Ezion Geber. They set out from Ezion Geber and encamped in the wilderness of Sin, that is Kadesh. They set out from Kadesh and encamped at Mount Hor, on the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the priest ascended Mount Hor at the command of the Lord and died there, in the 40th year after the Israelites had left the land of Egypt, on the first day of the 5th month, and Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. And the Canaanite king of Arad, who dwelt in the Negev in the land of Canaan, learned of the coming of the Israelites. They set out from Mount Hor and encamped at Zalmunna. They set out from Zalmunna and encamped at Punan. They set out from Punan and encamped at Oboth. They set out from Oboth and encamped at Ayi Abarim in the territory of Moab. They set out from Iyim and encamped at Dibon Gad. They set out from Dibon Gad and encamped at Alman Diblathaim. They set out from Alman Diblathaim and encamped at the hills of Abarim before Nebo. They set out from the hills of Abarim and encamped at the steppes of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho. They encamped by the Jordan from Beth Yeshimoth as far as Abal Shetaim and the steppes of Moab. In the steppes of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall dispossess all the inhabitants of the land. You shall destroy all their figured objects. You shall destroy all their molten images, and you shall demolish all their cult places. And you shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given the land to you to possess it. You shall apportion the land among yourselves by lot, clan by clan, with larger groups increase the share, with smaller groups reduce the share. Wherever the lot falls for anyone, that shall be his. You shall have your portions according to your ancestral tribes. But if you do not dispossess the inhabitants of the land, those whom you will allow to remain shall be stings in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land in which you live, so that I will do to you what I plan to do to them." The Lord's... Oh, that's yours. I'm sorry. I was about ready to read it all.
So 34?
30... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm good. Oh, I'm sorry. We got another. Okay. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Instruct the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you as your possession, the land of Canaan with its various boundaries. Your southern sector shall extend from the wilderness of Zin alongside Edom. Your southern boundary shall start on the east from the tip of the Dead Sea. Your boundary shall then turn to pass south of the ascent of Akarabim and continue to sin. And its limits shall be south of Kadesh Barnea, reaching Hazar Adar, and continuing to Azman. From Azman, the boundary shall turn toward the Wadi of Egypt and terminate at the sea. For the eastern boundary, for the western boundary, you shall have the coast of the great sea that shall serve as your western boundary. This shall be your northern boundary. Draw a line from the great sea to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor, draw a line to Lebo Hamath, and let the boundary reach Zedad. The boundary shall then run to Zephron and terminate Hazar Enan. That shall be your northern boundary. For the eastern boundary, you shall draw a line from Hazar Enan to Shepham. From Shepham, the boundary shall descend to Riblah on the east side of Ain. From there, the boundary shall continue downward and abut on the eastern slopes of the Sea of Kinnereth. And the boundary shall then descend along the Jordan and terminate at the Dead Sea. That shall be your land as defined by the boundaries on your sides. Moses instructed the Israelites, saying, This is the land you are to receive by lot as your boundary portions, which the Lord has commanded to be given to the 9.5 tribes. For the Reubenite tribe by its ancestral houses, the Gadite tribe by its ancestral houses, and the half-tribe of Manasseh have already received their portion. Those 2.5 tribes have received their portions across the Jordan, opposite Jericho on the east, the orient side. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, These are the names of the men through whom the land shall be a portion for you, Eleazar the priest, and Joshua son of Nun. And you shall also take a chieftain from each tribe through whom the land shall be a portion. These are the names of the men from the tribe of Judah: Caleb son of Jephunneh; from the Simeite tribe, Samuel son of Ammihud; from the tribe of Benjamin, Elidad son of Kislon; from the Danite tribe, a chieftain, Buki son of Yogli; for the descendants of Joseph from the Manassite tribe, a chieftain, Haniel son of Ephod; and from the Ephraimite tribe, a chieftain, Kemuel son of Shiftan; from the Zebulunite tribe, a chieftain, Elizaphan son of Parnak; from the Issacharite tribe, a chieftain, Paltiel son of Azan; from the Asherite tribe, a chieftain, Ahihud son of Shelomi; from the Zephthalite tribe, a chieftain, Pedahel son of Ammihud. It was these whom the Lord designated to allot portions to the Israelites in the land of Canaan. What say you, Jim?
Oh, you want to talk or you want to read?
Yeah, talk, and then we'll.
Oh, okay. No, this is this starts out, I guess, like a review of all the various stops that the Israelite made. Some counted, and I didn't double check it. I didn't try and count it. So they make 42 stops, and it's curious. I've heard that God has 42 names. Mm. So I don't know if each stop represented a letter of God's name, but there was 42 stops. Sometimes I guess they may have an average of, but sometimes they didn't say equal times at the stops, but they just stayed at various times. The one interesting thing is sometimes it mentioned some of the events that happened at those locations, and sometimes it didn't. And sometimes it mentioned important things that went on there. And some of these places we can recall that, oh, this is where such and such happened, or this is where such and such happened. But the others, the names are almost foreign to us. We don't know what happened there. Mm-hmm. So we say, well, gee, are those places important? Well, they may not be important to you, but they were important enough to God that He mentioned them.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So whatever happened there,
that's right,
was important to God, and and God told Moses to record it, and Moses didn't question it. He recorded it. He didn't say, "Gosh, God, nothing happened there." But God said, recorded. We don't know what happened there. We don't know if anything important, but it was important enough for God.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things in our lives that we may not think are important, but they're important to someone. We may find them insignificant.
Mm-hmm.
They're significant to someone, and that's the same thing. So don't see things you do as insignificant. They don't
Yes.
mean anything.
Yes.
They mean something.
Yes, they do.
The other part having to do with dividing the land up, the boundaries are somewhat smaller than the boundaries that were given to Abraham, and some said that Israel really won't build the land until Messiah comes again. But they have taken a smaller portion of land than what was promised. Hard to say why, but this is it's not the full occupation of the land. Maybe not enough people came out of Egypt to fill it. Apparently, some people.
He said he wouldn't get. I forgot where it's written. He said he
Oh.
wouldn't give it all to him at once.
Right.
Yes,
They were going little by little.
Yes, little by little. Let's say wild animals devour them or something like that.
Yeah,
So
but
it'd be little by little.
they never really possessed a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing I did make a note of. When they left at Passover, and verse 4 says, "For the Egyptians buried all their firstborn, which the Lord had smitten among them." And when the spies toured the land,
Mm-hmm.
what did they see? A lot of people being buried. And I'm thinking, wow, couldn't they have reflected back on the Exodus out of Egypt? That where God smote the firstborn, and God was smiting the people in the land they wanted to occupy.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they were so great and powerful, but they didn't see God's hand at work that second time. I'm guessing they saw it the first time, but either they didn't see it the second time or they just didn't remember it the second time. But that's all I have for that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we come to the last part. The Levitical towns and cities of refuge. And I'll read all of 35 and then you take 36.
Okay.
The Lord spoke to Moses on the steppes of Moab at the Jordan near Jericho, saying, "Instruct the Israelite people to assign out of the holdings a portion to them, towns for the Levites to dwell in. You shall also assign to the Levites pasture land around their towns. The towns shall be theirs to dwell in, and the pasture shall be the cattle they own, and all of their other beasts. The town pasture that you are to assign to the Levites shall extend 1,000 cubits outside the town walls all around. You shall measure off 2,000 cubits outside the town on the east, and 2,000 on the south side, 2,000 on the west side, and 2,000 on the north side, with a town in the center. That shall be the pasture for their towns. The towns that you assign to the Levites shall comprise the 6 cities of refuge, which you are to set aside for a manslayer to flee, to which you shall add 42 towns. Thus the total of the towns that you assign to the Levites shall be 48 towns, with their pasture. And setting aside towns from the holdings of the Israelites, take more from the larger groups, and less from the smaller, so that each assigns towns to the Levites in proportion to the share it receives." The Lord spoke further to Moses, "Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall provide yourselves with places to serve you as the cities of refuge, to which a manslayer who has killed a person unintentionally may flee. The city shall serve you as a refuge from the avenger, so that the manslayer may not die unless he has stood trial before the assembly. The towns that you thus assign shall be 6 cities of refuge in all. 3 cities shall be set aside beyond the Jordan, and the other 3 shall be set aside in the land of Canaan. They shall serve as the cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall serve the Israelites and the resident aliens among them for refuge, so that anyone who kills a person unintentionally may flee there. Anyone, however, who strikes another with an iron object to the death is a murderer. The murderer must be put to death. If he struck him with a stone tool that could cause death resulted, he is a murderer. The murderer must be put to death. Similarly, if the object with which he struck him was a wooden tool that could cause death, and the death resulted, he is a murderer. The murderer must be put to death. The blood avenger himself shall put the murderer to death. It is he who shall put him to death upon encounter. So too, if he pushed him in hate or hurled something at him on purpose, death resulted. Or if he struck him with his hand in enmity, and death resulted. The assailant shall be put to death. He is a murderer. The blood avenger shall put the murderer to death upon encounter. But if he pushed him without malice or forethought, or hurled any object at him unintentionally, or inadvertently dropped upon him any deadly object or stone, and death resulted, though he was not an enemy of his, and did not seek his harm, in such cases the assembly shall decide between the slayer and the blood avenger. The assembly shall protect the manslayer from the blood avenger, and the assembly shall restore him to the city of refuge to which he fled, and there he shall remain until the death of the high priest, who was anointed with the sacred oil. But if the manslayer ever goes outside the limits of the city of refuge to which he has fled, and the blood avenger comes upon him outside the limits of his city of refuge, and the blood avenger kills the manslayer, there is no blood guilt on his account, for he must remain inside his city of refuge until the death of the high priest. After the death of the high priest, the manslayer may return to his land holding. Such shall be your law or procedure throughout the ages in all your settlements. If anyone kills a person, the manslayer may be executed only on the evidence of witnesses. The testimony of a single witness against a person shall not suffice for a sentence of death. You may not accept a ransom for the life of a murderer who is guilty of a capital crime. He must be put to death. Nor may you accept ransom in lieu of flight to a city of crime. He must be put to death. Nor may you accept, ransom in lieu of flight, so that a city of refuge, enabling one to return to live on his land before the death of the priest. You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for the blood pollutes the land, and the land can have no expiation, for that blood is shed on it, except by the blood of him who shed it. You shall not defile the land in which you live, in which I myself abide, for I, the Lord, abide among the Israelite people.
And the chief fathers of the families of the children of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of the sons of Joseph, came near and spake before Moses, and before the princes, the chief fathers of the children of Israel, and said, The Lord commanded my Lord to give the land of inheritance by lot to the children of Israel, and my Lord has commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of Zelophehad, our brother, unto his daughters. And if they marry to any of the sons of other tribes of the children of Israel, then shall their inheritance be taken away, the inheritance of our father, and shall be put into the inheritance of the tribe whereunto they are received. So shall it be taken from the lot of our inheritance. And when the jubilee of the children of Israel shall be, then shall their inheritance be put into the inheritance of the tribe whereupon they were received. So shall their inheritance be taken away from the inheritance of the tribes of our fathers. And Moses commanded the children of Israel according to the word of the Lord, saying, The tribe of the sons of Joseph said well, This is the thing which the Lord doth command concerning the daughters of Zelophehad, saying, let them marry to whom they think best. Only to the family of the tribes of their fathers shall they marry. So shall not the inheritance of the children of Israel remove from tribe to tribe. But every one of the children of Israel shall keep himself to the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. And every daughter that possessed an inheritance in any tribe of the children of Israel shall be wife unto one of the families of the tribe of her father, that the children of Israel may enjoy every man the inheritance of his father. Neither shall the inheritance remove from one tribe to another tribe, but every one of the tribe of the children of Israel shall keep himself in his own inheritance. Even the Lord commanded Moses, so did the daughters of Zelophehad. For Migdal, Teresah, and Hoglah, and Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, were married unto their father's brother's son. And they were married unto the families of the son of Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of their families, of their fathers. These are the commands and the judgments which the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses unto the children of Israel in the plain of Moab, by the Jordan near Jericho. The one interesting was the city of refuge.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the one we're talking about here. And this talks about, the city of refuge was a place where if an individual accidentally killed another person, he could go there and seek safety.
Mm-hmm.
Some tend to think, maybe he was in jail, but it's a place for him to seek safety from what they call the blood avenger. But one thing, maybe outright, if the person deliberately killed someone, the city of refuge was not designed for him.
Mm-hmm.
What was designed for him was a court of law, with two witnesses confirmed that what he did was murder, and if it was determined he murdered someone, then the blood avenger could take his life, or would be the first, could take his life and maybe even be the first one to throw a stone.
Mm.
So the blood avenger, they generally think them as a family member who is seeking one thing and one thing only. He's seeking justice. And justice is that big thing we all look for and we all seek. He wants to take revenge on someone that has harmed a family member, and essentially he's looking for justice. There were 6 cities of refuge. 3 in the Jordan area and 3 in the Canaan area. And if someone was accidentally killed, they could go to that city for protection and safety. But they had to stay there. They had to stay there until the high priest died. And you may say, the blood avenger may be saying, how can he get justice? And the only way he can get justice is some type of a divine justice. Mm-hmm. And when does that divine justice happen? It happens when the high priest died. And there was one part you read in there, and I didn't get it at first. It said the death of the high priest because the high priest was anointed. So I think not just anyone, but someone who is anointed, when their death occurs, brings about some type of divine forgiveness, or a sense of divine forgiveness. What did I write down? The death, I wrote this fast, the high priest's death was a type of an atonement. Mm. The event could serve as a substitute for the need for revenge and give rise to some type of forgiveness. Um, others may collectively grieve. Collective grief could bring about a sense of forgiveness when a great person died. So what happened, I think, is that when the high priest dies, it's a way of for the blood avenger to forgive, to find justice through forgiving that other person. Maybe kind of a warped way of saying it, but that's about it. It's a type of an atonement. It's a type of forgiveness. It's divine. It comes from God. But that's what I think this is all about when it talks about the death of the high priest. How can one person die bring about that, other than someone of great stature when they died? When I thought about Christ when he died on the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing." I guess they thought they were killing a guilty man, but they were killing an innocent man. And God would have been the blood avenger, but he asked them to be forgiven because they didn't know what they were doing. I guess Christ was saying, well, they're killing me unintentionally. They don't mean to be killing me. As if, because the only person that could receive safety from killing a person is the one who did it unwittingly. And I guess that's what Christ was saying. They were unwittingly killing him. They were killing him by accident. And God should forgive them. But the idea, I think, and one of the teachers was echoing the same thing, the event could serve as a substitute for a need for revenge and give rise to a sense of forgiveness. So his revenge is satisfied through the death of the high priest, and that's a type of forgiveness. Now, the last part had to do with the daughters of Zelophehad, who, if they married outside the tribe, one tribe was saying, their landholding could increase. And Moses said, well, that's a good idea. They can marry, but they have to marry someone within their own tribe. And I'm sure they were happy with that. You marry your cousin, right? They probably didn't care. There was a lot of them, so it wasn't like they were 2 or 3 cousins apart. So that seemed to be agreeable to them. But the idea of the cities of refuge. Oh, I'm sorry. When they went into the land, the first thing they set up was cities of refuge. So why did God do that? Because people are going to will be killed accidentally. It's going to happen that way. So you set up the cities of refuge first. Well, after they conquered the land, they set up the
first things first.
Yes, after they conquered the land, they set up the cities of refuge.
Well, maybe I just thought of something, John. They basically, though, they set up cities of refuge, but they set up a institution of laws of well, this is the beginning of more laws. If we're going to be living together, certain things are going to happen, and so we need to set up how we're going to deal with this. And that's true in any society. If you don't have a system of laws, and you don't institute them, and you don't what's the word?
Enforce them?
Yes, enforce them. Then what do you get?
You get vigilante justice.
Exactly. And so this is what God. That's why Moses set up this way. So again, things are out because you're going to have people living together. Things happen.
Sure.
We got to outline how we're going to deal with it, so that there is no question.
Right.
And then we institute them.
Right.
That's what we do.
Right.
Otherwise, you have a breakdown,
Mhm.
and it's not good for the society. It's not good for the
Right.
people.
Right. And there's a court system in play here.
Yes, it definitely. So it's all part of that court system where it's very well outlined of if this happens, this happens. If this happens, this happens, and
Mhm.
we will institute the punishment or whatever. We will exact it.
Mhm.
So, and that's how we are able to live together in harmony. Without it,
Mhm.
and then I think the major thing though is that it's not just there's a system of laws and things. No, it's I think we know it goes beyond that. That these laws are from whom? The Creator of the universe,
Mhm.
who has who knows how we think and what is best for us because He created us, and that's why He gave us these laws and instructions, because He knows what's best for us.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
we can take a chance if we want and figure, okay, I know what's best. Well, we're not looking from the whole picture. We're not looking from the full dimensional picture. We're only looking through one dimension. And when you look through one dimension, you're going to miss all the other things that go into play in order to make an informed decision. So no matter how wise we are and how smart we think we are, our decisions are faulty. And so that's why we do rely on what God gave us to do. So,
Mhm. Right.
all right. You finished?
Yep.
You got your paper?
Oh yeah.
At the end of each Torah chapter, this. Yeah.
Yeah. Fell on the floor.
Can you get it?
Yes. Oh wow. Fell on the floor. I don't know. Ooh.
Masai. Masai.
I don't have that one.
You have Masai here. Here, no. Let me give you mine.
I had them both. One fell. Oh, maybe I didn't bring it with me.
Oh, okay. Let's take it. Give you this. At the end of each Torah portion, I'm sorry, at the end of each Torah book, there are 5 books in the Torah, the Old Testament. The first 5 books are called the Torah. And at the end of each, after we study each book of the Torah, this is recited. Right? You see it?
Yeah.
Hazak,
Hazak,
Benit,
Hazek.
Chazek.
Be strong, and may we be strengthened.
By His word, because His word, it is said in Ephesians that His word is a sword. And so that's how we're strengthened. If we are troops, if we are the army of the living God, His word is our sword, and His word is the Torah. And these words from the Torah will help us to be strengthened to fight the ultimate enemy, who resides not only in a physical surrounding, and the enemy we are fighting is from heavenly places, from dark places. So that's why we need God's word in order to fight this ultimate enemy. So, next week we start in a new book, Davarim, and we start toward the High Holy Days, which are Rosh Hashanah starts September the 25th at sundown, I believe. And so that begins the Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot. So it starts out. Let me see. I think he has it for me on the sheet here. No, this is not. Okay. Davarim starts out. Return to it. Next week, it's what's the Torah? It starts at Deuteronomy 1 through
3 something. Hold on. 3:22.
okay, through 322, and it starts out, אלה הדברים אשר דבר משה אל כל ישראל בעבור היורדן במדבר בערבה מול סוף ביד פרן ובעין תפול ולבן וחצרות ודי זהב. These are the words that Moses addressed to all Israel on the other side of the Jordan, through the wilderness in the Arabah near Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazaroth, and Dizahab. So we look forward, because Deuteronomy is a Davarim. I love Davarim because it sums up everything. And in addition to summing it up, I think it's a messianic book. All of Torah is messianic. It's about God creating a way for man to return to Him. It's every bit of it, from Genesis to Revelation, is a messianic story of how man disobeyed God's orders or His commands, and God made a way for him to return to Him, because we have been separated from God since the sin of the Garden of Eden. We were not able to do what Adam and Eve did with God, walk with Him in the garden. Because of our sin, it was dangerous for us to be close to God, because being close to godliness, to that kind of purity, would just disintegrate us, would kill us. And so God had to push us away so that His goodness would not obliterate us. So He has made a way through the death and resurrection of Masei Yeshua for us to come back to Him and be underneath His wing, even though we have sinned, because Yeshua's sacrifice and work He did on the cross covers our sins, so that we are made holy enough to go back under the wings of our Father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the pure, simple reason why Yeshua had to die and be resurrected on the third day, is to give us a covering for those who choose to accept His covering. And we accept His covering. We accept His covering and what He did for us, because we desire to be back under the wings of our Father in heaven. And He is here with us today. He's showing us what the things that we'll need for the next week, and He's comforting us, and He's patching us back from the wounds we received last week. Because as we go forward into the time where we await the return of our Messiah, the wounds that we receive each week, each day, each hour of the day will become more severe, because we're standing for the God of Israel in a hostile world. Pure and simple. The world is hostile toward us. But that's not to say that we cannot stand. We will stand. And we will do what God has asked us to do, be true to Him, and to do His word, and God will take care of the rest. So, we say,
Shabbat Shalom
and
Shavua Tov.
Have a good week, and Shabbat Shalom. And also, this is the beginning of the new month. And again, preparation toward the High Holy Days, because according to you see a lot of chatter on the social media about this being a fortuitous time. And it is. You can tell that Messiah is getting close to return. But each day, we must use the example of the parable about the 5 foolish and the 5 wise. Whether we know the exact day and return of Messiah is not important, because according to the parable, we should always be ready. We should have extra oil in our lamps, so that should He come in the nighttime, we have extra oil to go out and meet Him. And not do as the foolish did, because they didn't have extra oil. And when they heard the announcement that the bridegroom is coming, they asked the 5 wise virgins, give us some of your oil. And they wisely said, well, if we give you our oil, then when they call for us to come, we won't have enough. So go and buy oil. And then while they went to buy oil, the bridegroom shouted out, and the 5 wise had extra oil, so they went out while the 5 foolish were buying oil. So I say, yes, we know the Lord is coming. I don't know that we need to know that date. in my opinion, people talk about the rapture and so on and so forth. What we need to do is to always be ready with extra oil. Mm-hmm. Every day be ready with extra oil. Because again, another parable talking about the man of the house who went away to a far off country, and they didn't know when he was coming back, and they were frivolous. They were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, and when he came back and caught them unawares. That we don't. Well, so if I could say anything, I think one of the things I would reiterate is always be ready. Mm-hmm. Having the Word of God, studying the words, using the Shabbat as a rehearsal, using the Shabbat as the time to get more oil, because you're getting oil by studying His Word. So that is important in and of itself, knowing God's Word. So be ready. That's all I can say. The high holy days are important. They're very important, whatever God chooses to do. But the important thing is to be ready. So, and meet us here again on Shabbat. Meet God on Shabbat. Meet Him. Set aside that time and meet God. That's what you need to do. That's the start you need to make. Set aside the time and to meet the God of the universe. I said this last time. I said, if the President of the United States, whoever he may be, gave you an appointment to come meet with him. If a governor of your state gave you an appointment to come meet with him. If the mayor of your town gave you an appointment to come meet with him. If the Queen of England gave you an appointment to come meet with him. I bet you'd go. Mm-hmm. I bet you'd go, because you will have face to face with that person, and you don't know what you may be able to glean or get or whatever. But here the God of the universe is making an appointment with you. And He says, I make an appointment. And not only does He make the appointment, He provides food for you for that day, so you don't have to worry about going out to work to get the food. He provides it. And He said, meet with me. I'll be here on the 7th day at sundown on Friday, and meet with me. And we ignore that call. Then you really don't know what you're missing. The Queen of England, President of the United States, the governor of your state, the mayor of your town can't do for you what the God of the universe. And yet you ignore Him. And yet you say, well, no, we'll meet with you on another day that we choose. Well, no, this is the King of the universe. And you dare turn down His invitation to meet with Him face to face? That's why it's so important here that He is face to face with us. He has come close to us so that He can hear our hearts, hear what's in our heart, hear what He knows what happened to us for the week, but He can heal us up. He's come to heal us, to put balm on the wounds that we had received during the week, and also to encourage us to go out for a new week. So, as we close down, and we've already said Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov, I got on the tirade here, but it's so important during these days, especially leading up to the high holy days, that you spend time with the Lord. And we say Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat. Thought I forgot. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shabbat, Shabbat Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat 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 Shalom.